And so what we wanted to do now is just to be able to give you a bit of an insight into what was taking place in some of the other rooms. And we will be writing this up into a bit of a report, and obviously feeding it into the work that David and Rachel and their partners are doing. So I just wondered, from the other groups, I think we've got Rachel and Peter who were facilitators. Would either of you like to share with us parts of your conversation? Oh, we've got a dog that's joined us as well. Peter, Rachel?
Yeah, how did I know that? I said to my group, I said, I bet she picks on me first, because I was scribbling away. So we had a small group, but we've come up with nearly all the answers, I think, to the problem. So you know, we'll kill everybody else off with that, with our response. So we had people in a diverse set of backgrounds. We had Katrina in ours, who'd obviously done the presentation on the waste map, and we spent quite, and topolytics. So we had quite a long chat about that work as both opening up opportunities, overcoming barriers, and being a really excellent mechanism for dealing with a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. So, you know, some of the opportunities are around the use of digital to understand better where stuff is, what condition it's in, who owns it, etc. Everything that Catriona was talking about in her talk. Building up waste maps at a range of different scales, and being able to use that information to better matchmake between suppliers, people who's got waste or end of life product or needs the types of materials or products that others might not want. So various exchange platforms, sharing platforms, etc., etc. We were just starting to talk about opportunities around changing design, you know, as a big driver, which can have many different dimensions. Then on barriers, things about not knowing what something's made out of, what's in it, you know, the bill of materials, condition, etc., etc., is a big problem. Additives, hidden additives, substances of concern. So we heard from one of our group members. There's 8 billion tons of aluminium bauxite waste in the world. So who wants to buy some? A huge source of waste material, which may have value, but the trouble is, how do you move that stuff cost effectively? If you can find a buyer, how do you move it cost effectively? We had to talk about policy, which we could have talked about, you know, for a long time, about what are some of the policy barriers, you know, the definition of something, you know, the definition of waste, the categorization of waste. We just started talking about accounting rules, and the way that capital plant and equipment is written down, amortized over a given time period, which then makes it difficult to make the case for upgrading and improving the capital plant if that's what you want to do. And then we had a little bit of a, you know, run around on mechanisms. You know, we were talking about financial levers, introducing taxes, landfill tax, obviously a good example, but there are many others, carbon tax and so on and so forth. And finally, we came back, we almost went full circle, which was appropriate, to talk about how you would link something like topolytics to exchange platforms. One of the big challenges in the circular economy is how do you find buyers for stuff, you know, who wants it, and how do you make that more visible? So that was just sort of a bit of a run through some of our key points.
Great, thank you. Some overlap, but quite a few different points to our group, so that's really good. And Rachel, if you're there, or Matt.
Yeah, I'll feedback from our group. I'm dialing on the phone, but I was taking some notes along the way. So we started off with obviously the opportunities and barriers, and there's quite a fair bit of overlap. Where there's a barrier, there's also an opportunity. But I think sort of we split it into maybe two key areas. One is assets that are in existence now and have not had any sort of thought about how they're going to be disassembled or remanufactured at the end of their life. It's what can we do with those? We're obviously going to need to deal with them in a sustainable manner. And then also brand new equipment or materials, when we're sort of designing those, we need to instill in the very beginning in that design phase, the end of life considerations, what we're going to do with them, because if we don't get them in at the beginning, then we've got no hope when it comes to the end of their useful life. So in terms of opportunities, there's great opportunities for carbon saving and resource efficiency. We need to think about that design for disassembly, and we think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the aviation sector there. Reverse logistics of processes. The phrase engineering was talked about a lot, thinking about end of life right at the very beginning, and skills was a common theme, that at the moment we don't have those skills needed to, for example, remanufacture. They're not the same skills, and there's also a barrier there, is how do we train people up sort of here and now to get them ready to when we are sort of, I guess, a nation that's more adept at within the circular economy. Do we need those skills online in the short term? We did talk a little bit about sort of regulations and standard, how they are definitely needed to increase the adoption of products that might have been sort of remanufactured or refurbished, what have you, but we don't want them to be a blocker when we're doing so. So in terms of sort of the third and final question, on standards, we think, well, actually everything we agreed that needs to happen in the short to medium term, it needs to be done now in order to have an effect in the long term. But for standards, yeah, a very sort of short, medium term opportunity to get them involved now. Economic incentives, again, it's a very short term thing. It's something that's quite easy to implement, especially in terms of funding, if we get a favourable sort of spending review. Skills, as we mentioned, definitely needs to happen now. Sharing of data availability, again, short to medium. And Sally, also from KTN, gave the example of sort of taxes, how that has potentially worked in the plastics industry. Getting people to sort of come together, introducing a tax that makes the action happen now. Rachel's just dropped me a note in the chat. Thank you, Rachel. EPR, we also discussed about EPR. And then finally, I guess, education and behavioural change, and be ensuring that it's not greenwashing people in doing so. I think that's probably covered anything else. Rachel, was there anything I missed?
No, I think that's a really good overview. But I think, yeah, it was really interesting to hear the conversations and the priorities, and how, yeah, as you say, there's that clear need to be taking these actions now. We can't be relying on those longer term activities. We need to be setting the scene, setting the baseline, upskilling, so that we have the resources and capabilities to ramp this up at scale.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, really detailed summary, and again, lots of common points coming out, but a few different ones. I'll try and give a summary of our group, but David, please do jump in, or anyone else to add. So we tended to discuss kind of the opportunity, the challenges, but then also came up with some solutions or opportunities for solving them, which was quite productive. So conversations were around kind of the use phase of products is largely in the hands of consumers. So how do we present circularity progress to consumers in a way that doesn't overwhelm or alienate them? Also the point that there are many complex variables associated with keeping a product in use. And so it's handy, therefore, to try and boil this down into a single metric that it is easy to understand by non-experts, so easy to understand by consumers, but also to other people across the businesses who will need to be engaging with this metric in order to influence their actions and decision making. We discussed trust and credibility as a key challenge, and how do we all know that we are measuring things in the same way and that we're all using the same viewpoint. And it was suggested that having an independent organisation would be a solution to work across organisations to help benchmark and standardise and ensure we're using similar metrics. There was a challenge around companies, particularly small companies, having limited bandwidth to engage with the broad range of expertise and skills that are required to bring about this change. Need for people to have lots of different expertise, or for you to be able to develop those skills in-house. We talked about maybe the potential of crowdsourcing information, and also working together to prevent all companies from having to do this in an individual way. So developing individual models, we really need to be working harmoniously as sectors or across value chains to do this together. And there was the idea of a commission to enable that cross-sector movement. Also spoke about trade-offs and decision-making and how we're trading off economic versus environmental and social benefits, offsetting carbon versus circularity. And that then led on to a discussion around the need to model kind of all operations within a business to better understand how individual initiatives are going to then impact across the whole business or the value chain in order to enable decision-making or prioritization. And then we had a conversation around kind of products and the need for standardization of parts, but for consumers wanting customization or the ability to choose between different products. And then we went on to talk about different business models such as product as a service, enabling or selling experiences or bundles as opposed to individual products, and how that might change then the mindset of companies and consumers. So that kind of in a nutshell, but it was a very broad and varied discussion. David, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, it's pretty much word for word the notes I made in the Google Doc, so at least we were both listening, so that's good. Okay,
that's brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, I mean, some fantastic discussion. As I mentioned, David and Rachel are really keen to try and bring some of this discussion into their report, into their study. And I'm sure that today has been useful for them to help them do that, hopefully. Also, we're working closely with Oakdene, Hollins and KTN and Innovate to take what you've done in your report and help it to inform our own road mapping. So as the CE Hub, part of the wider NICER programme, we're looking to develop a circular economy roadmap or series of transformational pathways for sectors. And these types of discussion are really, really useful to feed into that. Also, as Peter mentioned in the chat earlier, we're developing a circular economy taxonomy, which kind of encompasses a lot of the suggestions that have been made today, alongside the data observatory that we're developing. So yeah, loads going on and some fantastic conversations that really help bring this together. And a large part of the NICER programme, and certainly the Hub, is to run events such as this so that we can really get your opinions, get your viewpoints, and allow you to form part of the discussion, which is really important. So we've got another couple of events that are coming up. We've got one at the end of, trying to find my slide with it on. We've got one coming up at the end of November, 30th of November, which is on circular business models, which is a lunchtime webinar. And then we've got another seminar on transformational pathways that's taking place on the 21st of January. And you can find details of those on the website. Also, if you wouldn't mind completing our feedback form, we're always really interested to hear your feedback on this event and others that you might like to see from the Hub. And please do visit the CE Hub website, where you'll be able to sign up to our newsletter and find about all the other activity that's taking place across the NICER programme. So I'll just leave final word with Peter, David or Rachel. Anything else that you wanted to add before we finish?
Yeah, just two things, Fiona. Thanks everyone for your contribution. I mean, one, there's going to hopefully be a live symposium in London in March, early March, where we might be able to meet up face to face. So look out for that. That would be great. Maybe we can get an update from Oakdene, Hollins then. And secondly, as part of the work that we do, we're always looking for circular economy stories. So we came across renewables just by chance earlier in the summer, which led us to sort of follow up. So if you've got other examples out there that you know about and we don't know about, and you'd like to get promoted and disseminated, then do let us know. So this month's sort of story theme is related to COP26 and net zero. I think December is going to be circular economy isn't just for Christmas, and I can't remember what January is, but we'll let you know in the notes. So yeah, we're really looking for those innovative, sparky stories from many different groups. So yeah, do let us know.
Thank you. And David, Rachel?
Yeah, from our side, thank you very much, everybody, for being so candid, forthcoming with your views, and staying alert to everything. So thank you very much indeed. Hope we can keep you posted on progress. Perhaps follow up some of the snippets there from some of the active contributors.
Great, thank you. And yeah, thank you for your participation, and particularly to our speakers today who have, as you said, David, given really candid kind of insights into their businesses and what they're doing. So thanks for your participation, and see you all again really soon.